welcome to another Head2Head, and good morning, Keith Sutherland.
Good morning, Dennis.
Keith, one of the biggest issues around town, and we're coming off a council meeting from last night, which we'll get to, but the other big issue at the moment is the Alumbra Theatre and the question mark over some local contractors and others not having been paid. It's a hell of a situation.
It is, and it looks bad from all perspectives, because it was good to have Councillor Williams on the program explaining whose responsibility, because I would think that the public believe it's council responsibility, but the state government through Education Department, it was a contract let through the head contractor. Then there's sub-trades, and the money I believe is in the system, but some of these sub-trades, particularly a lot of local Bendigo trades, haven't been paid, and who can afford to have $100,000 outstanding when you're running a small business? So it's a sad indictment.
Yeah, I know a couple of the contractors involved that are locals that have done work there, and as I understand it, I think they're okay in terms of being paid, but they work closely and just got to know over a long period of time some of the others. And I was told again yesterday that at least one with employing people has already gone under, because regardless of whether the bill is paid eventually, a small business cannot carry those sorts of costs over a long period of time. Well,
they can't, and the thing is, our wonderful theatre, it was so magnificent, the opening and so on, and now this is a bit of a stain on the whole thing, and I just wish they'd hurry up and get it resolved, because I was always concerned about the overrun, because they were having to get it open for the opening night. People were working day and night, and I hope that all those contracts were signed off on, and I'm sure the state government and council were doing the right thing. It was a worry, because it's beautiful. Let's get on, let's enjoy this project. But yeah, it's sad, and it's sad for all those sub-trades and contractors that haven't been paid.
Well, I think you're right. Let's hope that those variations to contract terms were documented, because I'm hearing in some cases perhaps they weren't. And we've all had experience over a lifetime of building it, whether building a house or whatever. If you change something, it's not within that quote, then it has to be noted, or you're up the proverbial creek when it comes to putting in your invoice. So
correct.
I hope that that's the case, but also hope, Keith, that if it does prove to be the case that perhaps and some of the affected contractors have suggested that it's a stonewalling thing of just delaying payments so that the people holding the money are able to hang on to it over a longer period of time. If that proves to be the case, then one would hope that anyone locally, including council, building anything in the short to medium to even long term in this community, avoids like the plague anyone who would be found to have done that. I'm not suggesting it's happened, I don't know, but if that proves to be the case, then you would hope that those people never take charge of a contract again.
Absolutely.
In a position like that.
Yep, for sure, no doubt about that one.
The other one, Keith, and I know council meeting last night was a big thing, and you've had James Williams in on it. The Hopley thing at the old tip site out there seems to be reading the paper like most average punters do, or reading it online, it's hard to get a handle on what the hell's going on there.
It's really difficult, because it's a change of requirements from EPA. The old tip site was suggested there was no gases there last night. I don't know how you could ever say that without the proper scientific experiments to find out.
Real problems in Melbourne, didn't they? Was it Werribee?
And it's time and time again. And I know there was a lot of passion in the debate with Councillor Williams moved the motion, which was a council recommendation. And then you had Councillor Chapman, Councillor Leach, that were very passionate against and supporting the Hopley way that he's been dealing with it. And particularly the council did encourage him to go there. It's recycling a lot of old materials, etc. But then they can't guarantee that the site is okay to be utilised without all these checks and balances.
And this is where it gets very confusing for me. My reading of what I've seen in terms of being reported lately from Hopley's side would seem to indicate his belief is that none of the authorities have any problems with the site, and he's got that in writing according to what I've read online, and it's been attributed to Hopley. And then the other thing that I just can't quite get my head around is he's saying that there's no problem at all with taking it further. If he doesn't get the outcome he needs at VCAT, he's confident enough in the outcome that will be achieved, he would take it further. I mean, where do the line?
Well, that's a lot of litigation if you've got to take it further from VCAT, and VCAT will want some sort of resolution to it, but it's just the changes, and I don't know whether you can get a third party in to mediate on the whole project, but it doesn't seem like it's going to, and I guess VCAT are going to have to make that decision sometime soon, because
if it doesn't go the way he wants, then maybe go somewhere else.
That's right, 6-3 the vote was last night, so even the Mayor voted with the other two, and so it'll be an interesting outcome.
moving right along, we mentioned the Alumba, and we saw Bendigo Senior School principal Dale Pearce heavily involved in bringing that to fruition and then helping celebrate and enjoy the opening night. But then on a less positive note, we've seen reports lately indicating that there's been advice from Bendigo Senior to parents and students that they don't feel confident having teachers looking or out for students, if you like, or on, would you call it play yard duties or whatever?
Well, I suppose it's yard duties, let's call it that.
Yard duties, sorry, not play for senior secondary. But yeah, it's a damn shame. If I'm reading it correctly, then they're suggesting that there have been instances and experiences in Rosslyn Park that would send a message that they don't feel safe having teachers there.
I was really disappointed to see this, and I guess safety comes first on everything.
You walk through there all the time.
I go through Rosslyn Park all the time, day and night, and I've never experienced any problems now. But I'm wary about situations, and if I saw a group of people in the park at night time, I'd perhaps, steer clear of those people. But there hasn't been a problem. I'm not 100% sure. Sure, there might be some skirmishes, but when you've got that many students sitting in the park, winter, summer, eating their lunch, having fun, kicking footies and so on, I haven't seen it, so I'm not sure. But it's not the students, it's people that are going into the park.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I notice sometimes now that there seems to be other people that are sleeping rough in the park at times. I'm not sure if they're creating that problem, but it's just been those comments, and yeah, I was really saddened to see that because, as I said, I haven't experienced it. It's a magnificent park. Let's keep it that way, but it's a policing matter more than anything else if there is a problem. But as I said, I haven't seen it myself, and I hope I don't.
Look, my own view is, Keith, and I go through there a bit too, but my view would be that it's such a fantastic resource. It's almost, to me, the greatest resource our community has right there.
I'd agree with that.
CBD, it's just spectacular. It's not something that you would ever want to see people not able to enjoy to its full potential. And I reckon you get to the stage where if this proves to be a real problem, then, dare I say it, poor old council again, but maybe council look at one or two security type people in a CBD capacity who just make it their business that area's patrolled. I mean, well,
cameras, and I'd hate to see that because people want to have fun in there, and security cameras are like New York with Big Brother. Everyone's watching you, and be sad fact, but anyway, that's you've got to resolve it somehow.
I guess, yeah.
That's right.
I noticed you touched on with James Williams too the Bendigo Airport, and he has some big visionary plans there. With all the plans that he's talking about doing, will it accommodate a jumbo jet should Bronwyn Bishop decide to drop in and visit you in Bendigo for a coffee? Well,
I'm hoping that Bronny does come to town because there's a lot of stuff that I really want to talk about.
You had a bean
some
you
fundraising events at Geelong where it's only 80 k's from Melbourne. So what do? We hire a helicopter, $5,227, I believe, to go to a Liberal Party fundraising event
Keith,
down there.
For once, I am absolutely on your side with this one. I tell you, I read it and I just thought, well, the capacity for some people to attract criticism, warranted criticism, when they're on the one hand trying to defend the quality, if you like, of parliamentary representation in the face of voters who are saying we don't like what's happening there. I was staggered. I just thought, and then on top of that, you've had the big trip overseas late last year, I believe, another $100 and something thousand, and apparently to do more with securing a job over there.
It was $88,000 for her to try and become part of this European Union, not as a union as such, but she was going to become chair of that. $88,000. I believe that there was a $50,000 amount of money in a period of time for drinks in her office. She is the 7th highest user of overseas and money. The Prime Minister's number 1, and you'd expect that. Julie Bishop number 2, you'd expect, and then you've got Andrew Robb doing all these trade deals. But she's 7th on the list. Now, how does a speaker who's pretty much involved in speaking, independent on the, well, she's not independent, we know that. She's very biased. And
in your opinion,
in my opinion, and I'll qualify that by saying out of 400 people kicked out, 393 were Labor. Not
necessarily endorsed by IPTV, but
no, but my opinion, she is extremely biased. But to be the 7th on that list of spending, it's nearly $400,000. It doesn't gel with me when you're the Speaker. I'd love to see how that compared with the previous 2 speakers, which were Labor, of course. how it compares.
I think a better way though, Keith, might be, rather than comparing with old speakers or past speakers, to come up with a benchmark and say, well, this is the benchmark against which we'll measure all these overseas escapades. And a good one that would come to mind is Sir Les Patterson in his role as roving ambassador to Australia. I know Sir Les travelled far and wide, you know, to every race meeting going anywhere where there's a free drink. That might be a good benchmark to say, well, this is where the relevant people sit.
Well, they did compare with some of the other people that were doing similar trips, and hers were so much above. So it's just appalling, and no wonder we have a low respect of some politicians. And it was terrific on Facebook and Twitter last night. It went berserk, and rightfully so. In my opinion, her being biased.
Yeah, Keith, I agree. Actually, something I stumbled on through one of my sons, and I actually looked at the clip this time. They're usually music clips or something. I looked at the clip and I felt so compelled to do this that I'm going to do it anyway. We'll put the addresses up there now. It's a YouTube clip. Anyone who can be bothered, and I'll put a link to it on our on this program website as well for IPTV, because I just think what it so achieved what you and I have talked about time and again, and that is to put aside the party political biases and systems that we currently see holding our country back. I think what it is a link to a 20-year-old Scottish MP. She's making her maiden speech. If you're anything like me, I'm time poor like most people. I watched and was absolutely hypnotised by every second that she spoke, the passion, but more importantly, what she said. And I think if every politician took 3 or 4 minutes to have a look at this maiden speech in the Scottish Parliament, I'm not sure that I'm pronouncing her name right, Mhairi, I think, Black, Mhairi, but there's the link anyway. Have a look at it. I believe it just so summarises what's wrong with Australian politics today.
Well, if it epitomises what's going on in our Parliament, it'd be wonderful. And of course, if it comes from the Scottish Parliament, it's got to be good, because anything from Scotland has to be great, Dennis.
Keith, there was a bit of discussion too, I noticed, around social media with Tony Abbott and the talk of the Labor Party. Abbott suggesting, you know, we've got a leak out of the Labor cabinet, if you like, saying there may well be another carbon tax effort following Gillard and Rudd's unsuccessful encounters with a similar tax. I mean, how do you see that one playing out? Is it a genuine leak, or is it a bit of mischief making?
It's mischief making, because he earlier in this week, of course, he's under pressure. There's no question the Labor Party have said that they want an emissions trading scheme. That's what they want to do, and there's no doubt that that's the way of the future. We are the only country in the world that's opted out of having emissions trading, and under Tony Abbott's direct action, he's already put a price on carbon of $13.75. So it's ridiculous for him to say that there's not a carbon tax. They've already introduced it, so it's crazy. It's mischief making, because earlier in the week he's had a couple of terrible days with Barnaby Joyce running off the rails on other issues, which he did with the he was very vocal on the cattle trade, the Senwa mine being approved, saying I don't approve, but I just think that was a bit of a joke.
You mentioned Barnaby again, and I noticed, was it in the last 48 hours that the Indonesians have cut back big time on the cattle.
And citrus fruits. I didn't know that until last night.
No, I didn't know that. I still didn't know that.
So they've cut back about 3/4. So there's no doubt in my mind that it is in relation to Tony Abbott's macho man earlier comments back when the Bali 9 and the Bali 2 getting executed. There's no doubt that he was trying to play to the Australian public, Tony, but unfortunately, if he gets it, there's another side to the story.
And that's Tony. Country, a that's Tony Abbott. That's exactly.
They're entitled to do as they like, and therein lies the problem, that Tony wanted some pressure, and then for the Murdoch media to come out with those disgusting headlines.
I think
in Sydney and Melbourne, terrible.
But I think it's bigger than Tony Abbott, and I know where you're coming from there. But I'd go back to, I can't remember who was Prime Minister at the time. I think, was it Rudd or Gillard, one or the other anyway. When there was a knee-jerk reaction to some footage that leaked. I can't remember whether it was Four Corners, I think, at the time, about the way cattle were treated. That was absolutely were being treated. That caused Gillard enormous trouble as well. But I've said here before, I think the way Abbott, for a Prime Minister to get involved in the execution of 2 people over there for drug smuggling in a sovereign country where the rules and the laws were well known, all right, make a comment, make a sentence or one sentence reference to the whole thing. But for a Prime Minister of a neighbouring country to buy into it to the extent that he did, I think was just wrong. And I think if I was Widodo, I'd be over there and I'd be thinking, well, to hell with it.
Well, 2 issues in the last week, as I said, the cattle and now citrus fruits, and who would have believed? But then we've got this Prime Minister that has foot and mouth problem, and he keeps doing his time and time. So he's looking for a diversion. The carbon tax was a diversion for him yesterday. That's yesterday's news, and Greg Conboy summed it up very well on 7:30 last night. So, yeah, the Prime Minister's just looking for scapegoats because he's had a bad week in some of the things where his ministers and himself are really up in the limb, like the, of course, wind towers and the changes he's already made.
Well, I think to summarise that then, Keith, you'd have to say that anyone with two bob for brains would look at it and say the potential that Indonesia has in a whole range of areas, particularly in a trade area though, we'll focus on that one I guess, to have an impact on the well-being of Australia. You would hope that there should be somebody in a position of authority within any government, regardless of whether it's Liberal or Labor, to ensure that that relationship meets the expectations of both parties, and that would include the cultural sensitivities in Indonesia. But you would hope that that's a relationship that's bigger than politics, and no matter whether it's an issue of the way cattle are being slaughtered in that country or whether it's an issue of people being threatened with execution for smuggling drugs and respecting the laws of Indonesia, it's such a big ticket item. It should be bigger than politics, and there should be some post within our system to say, hey, okay, you can't just run off at the mouth and offend
Well,
a neighbour.
I think it's Julie Bishop, her role as Foreign Minister, and of course Andrew Robb as the Trade Minister. Those two will be behind the scenes trying to smooth it, because I don't think Barnaby Joyce is capable of being able to do that personally. But those two will be behind the scenes trying to smooth the sailing waters. And Julie Bishop's already come out and said it's not in relation to this. I think that's not right. I personally believe it is.
Keith, thanks again for joining us this morning, but I'd ask people too to take note of what your interview with James Williams, Councillor James Williams, the way he explained things, and he made the comment at the conclusion of the interview. I noticed how much he enjoys the forum where he's able to offer an explanation on a range of issues. You've raised difficult ones with him this morning too, Alhambra and the Hopley one, but for people to get the full story, I'd invite people to check that out now, your interview with James Williams on the Pointy End, and get the full story. So thanks for this morning, Keith, and we'd invite you to check that Pointy End out. James Williams, if you're wondering what happened at council meeting last night, and as Keith said, it was a very motivated meeting again, as they've tended to be lately, check that out because you get the full story from Councillor James Williams. And we'll see you again next week.